Hey guys, welcome to the Lunge and Lift podcast. Today we are tackling the big question: what is fitness? It's something that gets talked about a lot in the fitness industry, surprise, surprise, and with a rise in the number of different styles of functional fitness, racing and competing, I think it's something that it's important we get clear on, both as an athlete or just a Joe Bloggs gym goer, to understand what functional fitness means and how we can work with the definition to really get the most out of our training. So we'll be digging into all the nuances as usual, comparing, contrasting different styles of competitive fitness. And hopefully you'll come away with some takeaways for how to adjust your training to really get what you want out of it rather than get swept along with the standard definitions or lack of definitions that are out there at the moment. But before we get into it, as always, a big thank you to our show sponsor, Wit Fitness. Please check them out at One New Change in St. Paul's or wit-fitness.com and use our discount code LL15 to get 15% off your purchase. Rob.
Yes.
What's fitness, mate?
Well, are we going to go down the dictionary terms, or are we talking about what do you think fitness is to me?
All of it, mate. Let's start with the dictionary. Let's get that ticked off.
Well, fitness, I guess the dictionary term for fitness is the condition of being physically fit and healthy. Disease and lack of fitness are closely related. So one of the most important bits about the quality of being suitable to fulfill a particular role or task, I think the best definition of fitness for me is that part B. So the quality of being suitable to fulfill a particular role or task. That I think is a number one definition of fitness for me. So what about you? Do you agree with that?
Completely. Yeah, 100%. I think both the terms functional and fitness are in reference to something else. So functional fitness is a bit of a vague generalization that doesn't actually qualify what it's in reference to. So something can only be fit if it is referencing, like it says in the dictionary, a particular role or tasks. Something's fit for purpose. So you have to know what that purpose is before we can evaluate its fitness. And without a clear definition of what that task is, it's a matter of opinion, really, rather than fact as to whether somebody's fitter or not.
Something I'd like to think about that and get what your thoughts are on this. So I think functional fitness only come about because people didn't want to call themselves CrossFit. So they had to call themselves something, and they say, right, we're functional fitness, because basically anyone that's doing functional fitness at the moment is essentially doing CrossFit. They just don't want to be labelled in that box, which is completely understandable because CrossFitters have their own identity. Everyone knows CrossFitters. And then I think people that still like to maybe do some functional bodybuilding, some stuff outside of the fitness side of stuff, then puts the word functional there to mean, okay, it's suitable for real work, it's suitable for something. And yeah. I love the term functional fitness. I really do. And I don't want to bash on it at all, because this is how I love to train myself. I love to, even though I'm pretty much focusing purely on powerlifting at the moment, generally I love to be fit for life and ready for anything that's thrown in front of me. So the word function, the branding of functional fitness is for me ideal. But I think as when you showed me the definition of just the word functional is having a special activity, purpose or task. So a functional role, or then the other definition is designed to be practical and useful rather than attractive. A small functional bathroom. So I'm like, when you do take those two terms independently, they don't really make full sense, but I love it. I love it. So functional fitness for me is here to stay.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I think the definition of functional is very eye-opening in terms of it having a special activity, purpose or task. So a functional role. So you have to define that special activity, purpose or task before you can say whether something's functional or not. And it's the other one I like, which I think is especially relevant to fitness, is that it's designed to be practical and useful rather than attractive. So the point here is we are training our body to be practical and useful for something. rather than attractive. So it's almost an anti-bodybuilder type approach, which it originally was. I think functional training would like to distinguish itself from more traditional health and fitness, which kind of evolved through bodybuilding with,
Yeah.
like, the golden era of Arnold, etc. That there's almost a snobbishness about it of like, oh, we're not vain. We actually train our bodies to be useful rather than attractive. We're not here to look good. And now we've come full circle that functional bodybuilding is a thing because people have actually acknowledged that looking good is important to them. So having a balance between a body that moves well and looks good, as Marcus Philly would say, is a happier trade-off for most people rather than purely one or the other.
Yeah, I think it's where I think functional fitness has taken such a performance focus that it is now. So, say for instance, using the bodybuilding terminology. So, then if you think about Marcus Philly's functional bodybuilding. So, when you look at what he does, generally, his sessions will be a lot of strength work, some isolation work, normally with dumbbells and stuff. So it's not necessarily a machine isolation. So it's not bodybuilding, but it is bodybuilding. So you still got the function of the core bracing while you're doing your curls or whatever, and then doing some aerobic work, whether it's high intensity or just more of a steady duration. So he does cover all your bases. And the reality is for most people, that is exactly what they want. They want to be fit. So they want to be able to be aerobically fit. They want to be relatively strong, and they do want to look good. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's where the functional fitness umbrella, I think, really covers all that. I think where we're starting to now get a bit of an interest and divergence is where functional fitness is now turning into basically performance CrossFit, which is just without the branding of CrossFit, which is, again, completely fine. And I think it's such just one something that Hunter said in his episode last week with us, or the week before, 2 weeks ago, and he was saying, and he goes like, about the ring muscle up. It's just not really. You're just not going to do that, and it's true. But on the flip side to that, have the body awareness, to have the strength, and to get your body above the rings. I know a gymnast does it just to get the workout started, but I think for CrossFitters to get themselves up and down from the rings multiple times, I think is quite a good skill in itself. Like to have that understanding of what your body's doing, and that's I'd class as it's functionally fit, because you've got a task of getting on the rings, and you have to understand how to get your body up onto that ring. So technically, functional fitness.
Yeah, it's anything is functional if that thing is the task, right? So you could say like putting a carpet on a shelf is like training, putting carpets on shelves could be your workout if the function is putting carpets on shelves.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a circular argument to say something's functional for its own sake. And I think you made a good point there with Marcus Philly, in that he's basically laid out his perspective on what he thinks a well-functioning body should be, and that's his opinion. And don't get me wrong, I love loads of what he does, and think it's a great solution for a lot of people for what they want out of their training. But then he can't, because it's an opinion and not a fact. CrossFitters would criticize it and say, actually, there's no like high power movements, there's not Olympic weightlifting, there's not he doesn't do many box jumps or stuff like that. If I might be wrong there.
He does do snatches and stuff. He does do weightlifting, and I think he's just to kind of quickly counter that before you go any further, is what he always does, because I listen to his podcast and stuff like that, and what he does like to do is always remind people that he was like the 8th fittest in the world at one point, or wherever he was, and he's been to the CrossFit Games. He's taken his body to that extreme context of fitness, and now he's designed his version with the helps of like the OPEX guys and stuff like that. But he's now said, right, actually now this is what I believe fitness is, and this is what I'm casting it, and which is, I know what you was essentially getting at. And so he said, right, I think you need to look good and move well, and that's his slogan. Totally. So
but that's like the things that he's saying the function of the body is is his opinion, like you just said.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody else could say, I actually want my body to be able to do X, Y, Z, and therefore his training is no longer functional for their purpose. So it's not like Hunter wants to win OCR races. That's functional bodybuilding is not functional for his purpose. What's his name? Medeiros wants to win the CrossFit Games again. Functional bodybuilding is not functional for his purpose. So it's only ever relevant to certain specific tasks and goals. And it's not a slapdash broad brush statement that everyone applies. It applies to everyone equally. And I think for me, with my like biology background, whenever I think of the word fitness, it always has evolutionary connotations. And the way I used to think about it then was fitness, like how well something fits. It's almost like a shape fitting a gap, in that an animal is fit for its environment if it's well suited to survive and reproduce in that environment. So there's loads of dimensions to that, like how well can it deal with the terrain, the temperature, like how easily can it find a mate. And it is so context and situation dependent, in that I wrote down an example here, just a bit silly reading it out now, but a polar bear and a lion are both great predators in their own environment, but if you were to swap them, they wouldn't last very long in each other's environment. So their fitness is so specific to their context. And I think as an athlete, your fitness can be very specific to your context, in that you can dominate your own sport, but you get picked up and moved into another sport, you probably can't. And this is, I think, what made CrossFit so popular, is because their message was, you might not dominate any of them, but you want to hold your own and do well in all of them. And my first boss in CrossFit, I guess, Jack, shout out Jack if you're listening, he used to have a sales pitch which said, if you got 5 athletes, you got a 100-meter sprinter, a shot putter, a marathon runner, like basically picked 5 different sports with all different requirements, and you put them in a multi-sport competition, they would obviously win their own discipline, but they wouldn't do so well in the rest. So like the 100-meter runner wouldn't do so well in the shot put, and the shot putter probably wouldn't do so well in the marathon. But the CrossFitter would probably come second in a lot of them, or third, but it wouldn't come last in any of them. And that's sort of the goal of CrossFit, is to be that generalist, average. Yeah, and ready for any type of fitness. And I think that's why it's so attractive. But now, as you said earlier, as it's become a sport, it's becoming more and more abstract, until you have to do stuff like freestanding, handstand push-ups.
Yeah.
And you've then got a challenge to say, what is this functional for? Like when it was running, swimming, jumping, picking up heavy shit, it has very clear real world carryover. But now we're starting to have handstand walking obstacle courses. It's cool, it's an amazing spectacle, and it's an incredible thing to be able to do with your body. But what is the functional purpose of that type of fitness? And I think that's almost sparked this second wave of functional fitness competitions, in that people are challenging that to say, that's not really relevant to me. So like Hunter's definition, I really liked, where he's just like, I want to move through space, I want to navigate tricky terrain. If I need to climb a fence, hop over a fence, and I need to pick up heavy shit or carry heavy shit. And that's pretty simple, very accessible, and you can very clearly link it to real world application of fitness, because you're going to do all those things in your life at some point, aren't you?
Yeah.
And I think, but maybe the next thing to discuss then, so given everything we've just said, what is the function of a human these days?
Do you know what? I think the function of a human, is now fuck all. And this is the problem, because we're being boxed into offices, sitting down all day, doing these jobs, and a lot of people hate their jobs. They're just doing it for a paycheck, and it might be a great paycheck, it might not be a great paycheck, but so many people are now doing things they don't like, and they're not being active with their body, and then for a very small part of their day, they're then being active. So it's like, what do they now choose to be physical then? And I think this is what's kind of, as you said, like, you know, sparking the passion of like functional fitness. And like I just want to kind of bring back to the point you said there about like the freestanding handstand push-up. Now, when I saw that at the CrossFit Games, I thought, fuck, that's good. Because what he's done there, and he's a skill that they've kind of told the athletes before about, but they've never done that at the games. So can they deal with that kind of stress? So this now goes beyond just the physical output, but we now start tapping into the mental aptitude of the individual. Like, can they like on the fly work hard, and can they work out where their body is? Can they perform this task that's given to them? So when you take it as the role of the human in that specific task, can they do that off on the whim? And that's the thing, that they're being ready for anything. And now when you then come to now like the general public, is when I say like we're living in a world of abundance, right? We've got too much of everything. We're not in survival mode anymore. We're just chilling out. Right? We've got, especially in the Western world, thankfully, you're very grateful, but you know, we've got it pretty easy, right? So we have to find our own stress. We're not having the bear chasing us anymore now. Right? So now we have to create that bear in the gym. We have to create that intensity. We have to create a discomfort that most people don't like to kind of create themselves, because it's a comfortable life, right? So I think this is where it kind of gets really tricky, because for that 1 hour a day that, say, people train, whether it's 5, 6, 7 times, however many times a week, they now need to say, right, this is what I want to class as my definition of fitness, right? So whether that's bodybuilding, so just making yourself look better and look the part, not necessarily be able to perform the part, or something like CrossFit, where you're then doing the extreme, but then potentially getting a bit more battered because your body's not necessarily primed for it. So there's so many options now to decide on what the function is of the human. And it's, even though I like to think all of my training gives me the ability to handle whatever life throws at me at any time, in any state. And when I say in any state, that means if I'm intoxicated, that I can still do a couple of pull-ups on some scaffolding and not fall off and break my back, because I know that I have the ability to do that, and I know we've all done that. So, but this is the thing, it's like, that's what I love. And it's funny, because I was scrolling through my phone the other day and I went to Ibiza, and this was before Chloe, and obviously that pool party, and I'm doing a handstand walk. I'm like, why am I drinking doing a handstand walk? But it was at the time, it's peacocking, it's being, like, Hannah was with me, so I wasn't exactly trying to impress him. I was just being a dick, thinking back. But again, I was ready for anything at any point. I was able to do a handstand walk intoxicated. So my function of a human is to be prepared for anything you want to do at any moment in life. And that's what I love. And that's how I like training. Yes, I specialize in certain things at certain times. That's because I like to be quite goal driven. Mm-hmm. But all of it is a broad brush to say, be ready for anything.
It's a shame you weren't part of that I Train To campaign. I train to do handstand walks pissed at the Vegas pool party. That is why I'm in the gym every day. So you said it brilliantly there, mate. I think because we have such a comfortable standard of living nowadays, most people, their life nowadays is sat on a computer, working from home. That's bad.
Oh yes, we know.
Wearing out their thumbs deep in the scroll hole. So you don't need to do a lot of functional training to be able to do that. And,
I've gone so red.
When we I thought you might like that. So when we bring it to more of a sporting should we just let you calm down for a minute?
Yeah, compose.
When we bring it more to a sporting context, in sports, traditional sports, they have a much clearer, more consistent rule set, and the function is to win. So in football, you've got to score more goals than the other team. Simple as that. And given that the outcome is very clearly defined, and there are loads of ways you can go about it, obviously different styles of play, etc. But really, the scoreboard is all that matters in most sports. So from that perspective, you could argue that Fat Ronaldo or Paul Gascoigne were fitter footballers than other of their contemporary players who maybe had a better 5K run time. So in a fitness definition of fitness, the 5K runner would be fitter by that yardstick, but actually through a sporting lens, what actually matters, Fat Ronaldo or Gascoigne are more likely to score you goals. So they're fitter footballers because they are better fit for their purpose. And I think their purpose is the really key part of that sentence, in that in a normal sport, it's so clearly defined that, you know, the stats relevant to winning are what counts. Whereas in generic rounded fitness, there's so many different ways you could slice and dice it that it's open to interpretation and subject to people's opinion. And like we were just saying about CrossFit, it's kind of multifunctional fitness, in that the sport now is being able to deal with new movements on the fly or have a random challenge thrown at you. So it's the ability to deal with novelty as much as it is the traditional components of fitness. The 10 key physical skills, sure, building those is all well and good, but you still do have to, like, one day they'll have triple unders. I'm sure triple unders will come into the games, and some people will practice them, some people won't. And the people in the middle will be the ones who are able to learn them fastest. So it's that ability to acquire new skills, which is almost the meta skill on top of all the other styles of fitness. You compare and contrast that with something like High Rocks, which we keep talking about recently, and the workout is the same every time. So they've clearly defined what they think the function of a human is, a fit human is, and everyone can train and prepare very specifically. So functional fitness for High Rocks would be those 8 movements, it would be running, and it would be not much outside of that to have functional fitness for High Rocks. So it's a much narrower spectrum compared to other styles, which would also come under functional fitness. But then you're looking at, you know, battle ropes and kettlebells and all sorts of different things, which there's nothing wrong with, and they all serve a purpose for some people. But I think having that clarity makes it much easier to design a training program and do a training program, because you can see how everything carries over to your function, and you can see yourself getting fitter for that purpose. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how the space evolves, because I think we're going to see that divergence of, like, able to deal with randomness versus being fit in very specific ways. Separate.
Do you know what? It's kind of like following on from that as well. It's just, as you said, it made me think of, like, so not, I don't really have a gripe because I don't really give two shits, but the fact that, say, battle ropes and kettlebells are functional equipment, it's like, so just quickly to say that is like, at what point in your life are you waving these ropes up and down? Like, what function is that? And like, I like battle ropes because they absolutely burn your shoulders, and it's a great bit of, like, upper body conditioning. It's quite hard to condition your upper body like that aerobically in a way. Like, I love them, and they're quite low skill. So anyone, don't get me wrong, there is a bit of a knack to it, but generally most people can get a good, like, say, sweaty workout with them, and they're great, right? But, like, they're just, it's a bit of kit, and it's, I don't know, the whole calling them functional equipment, like kettlebells, I'm like, probably one of the bits of strength equipment that's been around the longest, right? And it's like what's functional about them? Like, the fact that you have to, you know, you can do multi directions, you can do functional movements with them, makes them a functional equipment. So it's sorry, it's just because I know that's a bit of a tangent, but it just made me think, because it's like we use tools to perform a task, and it's like the thing of, obviously, functional fitness is being able to do multiple tasks, right? Being able to do anything that's kind of put in front of you, and I think obviously with CrossFit, the fact that they use things like kettlebells and stuff like that, it adds that functional element to them. And because, you know, you have to, a lot of it is total body bracing, right? Or total body movement. So you have to be able to control the weight through space and time rather than just your body. So I don't know. So that was just a little tangent.
No, I think it's a good point. I think the thing that sort of surrounds that, or I think of for it, is that what is the task that it's helping you with? So if we look at high rocks, running, the task is transporting yourself from A to B. If it's a sled drag, it's carrying a heavy object from A to B. Like they're very obvious carryovers to what a real world task would be. Whereas for battle ropes and kettlebells, it's perhaps a little bit more abstract as to what the real world task that's helping you get better at is. Like boxers use battle ropes for shoulder endurance, and there is like a tenuous link there that you could argue, your arms are in a similar position, you're building that capacity to keep your hands up, which is an important part of the sport of boxing. And kettlebells, depending how you use them, you can replicate certain motor patterns. So kettlebell swings, triple extension is similar to a jumping style pattern. So it's functional for athletes who want to have a two-legged takeoff maybe in whatever sport they're doing. So there are arguments for using those tools, but only if you have that task defined as what you think it's moving you towards. Otherwise it's sort of like just general moving, and moving's great. I'll always advocate movement for the sake of movement, but I think when you're classing something or trying to call something functional fitness, having the function outlined, or at least a vague idea of it, lets you qualify what is functional versus not.
Because it's funny because it just makes you think you won't ever really see these battle ropes at the games. You just like 60. You never know. But it's just that's going to be the snippet. It's like, what a dickhead! He didn't know what he was talking about. Look, they're doing battle ropes this year. Who knows? But the reality is like when ropes are used, say at the games, like it is pulling stuff. It is climbing up them, and which is then pretty real life. Like when you're talking about survival of the fittest in your jungle, in your cave, you got to climb up a tree and fucking launch yourself and then drag your prey somewhere. So I get it. And I'm like, and for me, that's why I really enjoy CrossFit. I love watching it. I love doing it, and I get it. But one thing, just as you were saying, I think a couple of points back, and it just got me thinking. I remember watching one of the first CrossFit documentaries, and I remember that I think 2007 games, and they're hammering a nail into a thing, like hammering something in, like they're pretty functional, right, for like a day-to-day like trader, like trade work or something like that. And then they brought it back in the games where they did the sledgehammer to the thing to make it go along, and people criticize people's techniques, and it's like they're the type of things I'd love to see more of. Like they're unique parts of CrossFit. And I don't see why not every games there is, like, I know they do like odd objects, but that's like an odd movement that you don't train. You just don't train sledgehammer hits. But that is, like, I know from doing, say, home improvement stuff, when I'm getting my sledgehammer and I've got to hammer up and I've got to do some stuff, I've got to get a good brace, a good position overhead, and I've got to use that. It's obviously I'm not thinking brace, hinge, thing, but I've created such good body awareness and strength that I can put a lot of force through that hammer. So it's a bit of a shame that you don't see that as a yearly thing, that there is always a really abstract task. Like even like imagine a tree. Imagine I had a tree and a thing, like drag that tree. That would be fucking cool.
Well, I think that is way more functional than a lot of gym-based exercises. And you've just outlined there a real life application of that type of fitness. And it's like nailing something with a sledgehammer. There is a real world application there. And you've just reminded me of something I saw when I was really young, when I was in the States once on the ESPN, was the World Lumberjack Games.
Yes.
And this is a real thing. I'm going to look it up on YouTube afterwards because I just remembered it. And they would do shit like that. So it would be like a race to see who could chop the most blocks of wood in a certain amount of time, or who could chop the most trees in half, who could carry trees from A to B. And they've made lumberjacking as a profession into a competitive sport, and it's just one of the most American things I've ever seen. But it's amazing watching because the commentators just got the jargon's incredible.
They're great. They really are.
That is a real like principle of functional fitness, right? You are like, that's their jobs, so they're now seeing who is fittest for purpose in executing that job. Like if you're a lumberjack and you get paid for the amount of work you get done, they're going to find out who can get the most work done in a certain amount of time. There is no more functional fitness than that for a lumberjack.
Yeah, and I think like what kind of like I want to bring this back to myself, and it's like when I think so, I'm at the moment doing a bit of a kitchen renovation, and the reason I don't mind about doing these things is not only do I like to take on things I've never done before and like things to learn, like doing all this. So I've learned how to do electrics recently, and I've got quite proficient at that. Thank you very much. With some help of electricians, and I now have a lot better understanding. But when it comes to the brute strength,
contract inquiry. DM contract inquiry.
Yeah, go through lungeandlift.com. But the thing is like for me, when it comes to the actual physical labor part as well, the reason why I kind of not begrudge outsourcing it, because I know again it's the time that I spend doing that compared to others. It's when I can easily do something and I don't have that issue. And an example is, so I had to take out the oven. So I have a double oven in the kitchen, right? So I had to take it out and put it in the back garden. So it was out of the way because he didn't have the skip yet. And then when we got the skip, I had to carry it from the garden, around the house to the front of the house and put it in the skip. Now this thing, if anyone's held a double oven, they're pretty fucking heavy, right? But I don't train to lift double ovens. I don't train to lift that. And I don't specifically do D-ball carries or deep sandbag holds. I do these things, but I don't train to be able to lift an oven. What I train for and what I class as, say, fitness is that's my real world application. I have a house which needs renovation, so I know I'm going to need to lift things, and I don't have to rely on others to be able to lift something up. And that I think is like when it's so funny because actually picking up the oven off the floor, it took me about a minute to actually work out, right, where can I put my hands to hold it? Where can I put it into me? Basically like an Atlas stone in a way. So I'm thinking, right, how do I get this up? So I eventually got it up. And then I say, right, when I got it to the skip, I said, right, I now have to lift this up. So basically I did a kettlebell swing / clean. And that was the thing. I had to get it from the floor to the hip and pop straight away and then push. And it's like, I've done this before with like soil bags into the back of the car. And so I did an actual kettlebell swing. And it's like, the thing of the training for life, like being strong at everything, just means I have the capacity to be able to do these things. And it's just funny because me lifting the oven or lifting the soil bag is technically that's functional fitness, but that was the task at hand. And it's funny because it's just when I don't brand my training as functional fitness anymore, even though I do like to be fit for anything. It's just that I like to do functional fitness, but I don't really train that way. It's just this, yeah. Sorry, I'm off on a little
I think that's a beautiful example. It's not a tangent. I think it's a beautiful example of it's testament to your training that it has prepared you to be able to do that. A lot of people couldn't pick up a double oven on their own and carry it, but the fact that your training has enabled you to do that is an illustration of function. Like the fitness you have acquired is functional for the tasks in your life. Whereas if somebody, we're saying sort of off air, if somebody was a much narrower power lifter and all they did was squat, bench and deadlift, they might not be so well prepared to carry such an awkward object as an oven. And that general physical preparedness that you've acquired through your years of training let you do that safely. And I think that is one of the main use cases for what most people want from their training, is to just go about their day-to-day life, feel able to do whatever they want at any given time. And that is, I think, the knee-jerk reaction against bodybuilding, is that you can look amazing without necessarily being able to do something like that. Or you might put your back out if you tried it, and therefore your body isn't fit for the purpose that you have asked of it. And yeah, I think you should be proud of that, mate. That's
thank you.
A cool thing to be able to do without any sort of planning or preparation. Just rip out a double oven and carry it to the skip.
I'll tell you what though, it's definitely taking a battering on my hands, and because so now my accuracy definitely needs to be improved when I'm hammering things in, like chiseling out the wall, and I'm accidentally missing the chisel, smashing my thumb and stuff with a club hammer. Bloody painful. But it's just funny because it's like, I think a lot of people, I don't know, but I've definitely underestimated in the past the physical labor and like the stress on the nervous system and like that level of fitness. Like, it's such a different level of fitness. I've been doing all the kitchen shit, and then go and try and do some squat, bench, and deadlift after that. I'm like, by the end of the day, my body is just drained. And then I go and have a beer, and I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, this is not optimal. But it is what it is. Because I'll tell you what, I don't know what it is about physical labour, but fuck me, it makes you want to drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. The post-oven lifting beer. It's one of the best. All right, mate. I think that's pretty much us job done. So I guess from a takeaways perspective, I think to summarize what we've discussed, the key points would be that fitness is essentially how well your body is able to fulfill its requirements. So being clear about what your requirements are above basic function is essentially an opinion, not a fact. Like there's real low-level function for what we need to do with our bodies nowadays, and everything above that we get to choose. So decide what you want that to be, and then optimize for it. So what is your yardstick for fitness? What sort of athlete do you aspire to be like? What sort of tasks do you wish your body could achieve? And then use that as your North Star to direct everything towards. One important point we didn't go into any detail on was that fun is also a goal. So having your body able to do fun things, like maybe handstand walk pissed at a pool party in Vegas, for example, that is also something that you can prioritize, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So
I don't know what the training would look like. It's like the BMR, isn't it, really? It's like that.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Intervals, just like half a pint, 5 meter handstand walk, AMRAP. So yeah, don't get too caught up in the perfect optimal training routine for very specific types of fitness, unless you're looking to take your training to the absolute pinnacle of your sport. Then obviously some sacrifice is going to be required.
Exactly. And I guess that's the understanding, as you just said nicely there, that what does fit look like to you? If you're into a sport, you need to make sure your training is geared towards a sport. If you're into just life, then make sure you've got some structure. I think you said it nicely before about don't want to be too random in your training. What do you want to just kind of reiterate that point a little bit more? Because I think there's a really key point, because even though life is quite unpredictable, it's also quite predictable. So, it's being, you're not going to do too much random shit all the time, but there's sometimes an occasion where there is something random. And so what was the thing you said a couple of podcasts back?
Yeah, I think my take on this is that even if you're trying to prepare your body for randomness, your preparation shouldn't be random. The body adapts through progressive overload. So having consistent, steady increments of whatever demand you want to place on your body is the way that you prepare it best. So even if you're doing something like CrossFit, where, like we said, if you're going to the games, anything could turn up, you can still be systematic and progressive in how you prepare your body for that. And the randomness can actually be another variable. In the same way that you slowly increase kilos on the bar, you can slowly increase the degree to which randomness plays a part in your program. And I think we talked about it last episode or the episode before, how you would build a progression of randomness and mixed modality for heavy snatching. So you could just, first of all, the most simple is heavy snatching in isolation. Then you could have a small amount of cardiovascular fatigue, so maybe a little bit of assault bike, then hit a heavy snatch. Then you could have a lot of cardiovascular fatigue, so hard assault bike intervals into snatching. And then you could have conflicting stresses like grip fatigue, or doing burpees over the bar to disorientate yourself before you go into that heavy snatch. So you can slowly build up that randomness and mixed modality nature of the sport, just like you're building up the weight on a bar. And I think that point often gets missed in CrossFit programming, that people will try and jump straight into like an open workout when they've done 20 minutes of hard training, and then they try and 1 rep max. It's like you haven't built up to maxing out with that level of fatigue yet. So actually that is something that can be progressed sensibly, even though at first glance it appears random and unstructured.
And I think when we go back to obviously the title of the podcast being what is fitness, and we've said it there, it is whatever you determine it to be. And no one's right or wrong. And I think this is also then where just because someone else, say, does bodybuilding, that's their definition of fitness. They want to look the part. They want to look really good, and they might want to compete in their underwear on stage. Which, you know, I enjoyed when I did that for that one period, but then I realized that all my effort is based on someone else's opinion, and I didn't like that. Because then you just don't know who you're coming up against, and the measure wasn't right for me, and it is for others. But I now don't judge others based on that. That's their definition of fitness and what they want to train for, because it's a great way to train. And anyone that's done bodybuilding properly, like, it's more than just 8 to 10 reps. Like, you can proper end yourself, and especially when you have a good mind-muscle connection, stuff like that. Like, you can make bodybuilding fucking hard. So, you know, especially with a good leg day. But we want to just really remind you that fitness is a very individual thing. Don't judge others based on their fitness. But if we really want to kind of boil it down to, I think, as we said, Hunter's definition of fitness was quite a good one. I really like that as well. So thank you very much for listening. We really hope you got some stuff out of today. If you did, please share it with someone else that you think needs a bit of an understanding of what is fitness, or if they're a little bit lost and they're a little bit lost in their training, maybe give them this podcast listen, and they might be able to have a little think about what they really want to be training for, so they can get their own definition of fitness. But as always, if you do want to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, we would absolutely appreciate that. And you can find us on all the usual platforms. Head over to our website, lungeandlift.com. We should start saying that at the start, trying to get people over there. We've got a really cool download coming for you guys really, really soon. Just finish on final tweaks about your deadlift. So if you want to get super strong and improve your deadlift, check out our website, and we'll be sending it out to our subscribers ASAP. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.